You can tell me anything, anything. I'll love you no matter what. These were the words that I heard constantly when I was growing up. My parents meant them. We could tell them anything. All they wanted was for us to be happy and to do the best that we could. Even today, at this age, my mother is our biggest cheerleader and my father is our rock. We could tell them anything. So here's the thing with my parents. My parents never fought. They never fought. Never. So what happens, right? Mom and dad they doted on each other. They would laugh together. If something was off a little bit, the other one would go into fix-it mode just to make sure everything's okay again. And I am the middle of three girls, no brothers. There's three daughters. We would fight sometimes. My younger sister had a habit of sneaking into my closet and taking my clothes without asking. Sometimes somebody was watching TV and I didn't want to watch what she was watching. So there's just the normal, typical sibling rivalry that happened in the house. And we would argue. But when that happened, we had to make up really quickly because you can't argue in this house. We don't argue here. We don't want to be like that family. So as I got older and I started to date, when there was an issue in our relationship, I didn't know what to make of it. And my reaction was either to shut down and then bottle up all of my emotions and go quiet, or I would completely explode. But either way, the relationship was over because we had a disagreement. And I didn't know how to manage that. It was not modeled for me. My parents also did not talk about money. They never talked about finances. It was always that it's nobody's business. It's nobody's business but our own. And I remember when I first started to work and they would say, you never tell somebody how much money you make. You never tell somebody how much your bills are. And it was a very, very private thing. So when I got older and I got into my own home, I was broke and I didn't know what to do. So sometimes I would call the electric company and ask for an extension so I could pay my car insurance bill. And I remember one time calling my parents crying and saying, I can't believe how difficult this is. You guys have always made it look so easy and I'm struggling. And they chuckled and they said, easy? When we first started out, we didn't even have 2 pennies to rub together. There were times I always thought Mom did couponing just as a way to pass the time. But she did it so we would have, the food that we wanted in the house. And Dad took on a second job sometimes. Mom would shop for Christmas all year round just so she could get some deep discounts and give me and my 2 sisters a really nice Christmas. But we never knew that money was tight because we don't talk about it. So here I am as an adult, finally realizing there are some life skills that I have not learned. And years later, I took a DNA test with Ancestry.com, and it took me on an unexpected journey, which led me to become a genetic genealogist with DNA Angels, a nonprofit organization that helps to identify biological parents at no cost. To this date, from 2019 until today, we've solved over 6,000 cases, and that number goes up every single day. Our clients include everything from stolen babies and abandoned babies, sperm donor babies, egg donor babies, adopted babies, NPE, which means not parent expected, which means basically the man on your birth certificate is not your biological father. Sometimes the man on your birth certificate knows that he's not your biological father, but he's claimed you as his. Sometimes he just doesn't know. But 20% of the people who take a DNA test with Ancestry will have a direct impact of a DNA surprise. So there's one thing that almost all of these kids have in common. Because, yeah, sure, some people know that they've been adopted. They've always known. But for the most part, they don't know. So, but the parents, either one or both, know something about this child that they haven't told them. And that's their biological history, their genetic history, their cultural heritage. You're led to believe that it looks like this, but the truth is it looks like this. And that is a very big lie. For me, half of all of the forms that I filled out at the doctor's had the wrong medical history. All of the paternal medical history was a man who I love very much, but I don't share his biological and health issues. We don't share the same DNA. So there was a lot of secrets. There was a lot of hush-hush in our house, just probably due to social stigmas. I get that. I'm not trying to put my parents on blast here, or any parents on blast, because we all know that parenting is hard. There is no handbook for this. There should be. I don't know who would be eligible to write it, because that person probably made their own slew of mistakes too. We all learn this the hard way. And we have to give grace and forgiveness. But I pretty much did hit the jackpot with my parents. Honestly, that is how I feel. Any of you who know them know how lucky I am and my sisters are. But here's the thing. From not learning how to have these hard conversations and how to work through conflict, I did find myself in some unhealthy relationships. And I took the same response as everything's okay, I'm fine, it's fine, everything's okay. And I do remember one morning after a particularly horrible night with my now ex, just sitting there, and my son looked at me, and I was like, it's fine, like everything's, just go to school, honey, like everything's fine, I'm fine, it's fine. And he said, it doesn't seem fine. And I remember at that moment just feeling conflicted. There was a pit in my stomach of shame that I would try to normalize this dysfunction that we were living in, with the intention of telling him that it's not as bad as it seems. Like, I don't want you to worry about your mother. You please just continue to be a child. But to normalize that is not healthy. So I knew at that point that I needed to have one of the first hard conversations of my life. And I said to him, baby, you're right. It's not fine. And this is life sometimes. You get yourself into a really bad spot that you've got to get yourself out of. And I'm taking you with me. And sometimes you have challenges that are little challenges, and you can figure out a solution quickly. Sometimes they're really big, and it takes you a little while longer. And sometimes you need to bring in the help. And this is one that your mom needs help with. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. I didn't want to go into anything that was going to freak him out. He knew that it was bad. And he knew that mom was done playing games. So we left shortly after that, thankfully. And he knows now. We've had these conversations many, many times to go back and talk about what it was like during those times. And he knows that he can ask me things and that I will answer him honestly. And today, as I'm going through things, I might say, Mom's struggling today. Mom's struggling with this, or this woman at work, or, whatever the case is. Mom just doesn't feel good. And he'll do the same. We have given each other the permission to feel the range of emotions and just to be human. And it is such a gift. Also, I met who is my now husband, who I believe was meant to be with me. He's just such a wonderful, kind man. But he, meeting an adult woman with basically an adult son, had to teach me how to fight. He had to teach me how to fight, because when we had our first fight, I went into oh, that's a shame that things didn't work out. And he was just like, why didn't, what? And I was just like, well, we're not compatible. I did not even know the difference, really, because it just was not demonstrated. The difference between being just a normal disagreement to not compatible to abusive. To me, a fight was just the same, and it was bad. It was bad. So he taught me, and now when we have arguments, we have a beautiful relationship. But when you have any two people in a relationship, all relationships take two people, you are bound to have issues, right? Because we're all imperfect people and we're all different. So when the issues arise, and I was like ready to just head for the hills with two things. One, hang my head in shame at just losing another great relationship. And also just, yelling out a string of anything I could yell at, because those were the two things that I did. And he sat me down and was like, why can't we just talk through this? And that was it. That was it. And we don't yell. If we yell, we don't yell a lot. But like sometimes voices go up. We never call names. We never hit. We never throw things. We never guilt each other. We work through an argument to a resolution. And once that resolution has been discovered, the conversation is pretty much over. But the next day, he will always touch base. I still like my space after a fight, but he'll come to me still and say, are you good? Is there anything else you want to talk about from yesterday? And it gives me the freedom to say, no, I'm mad. Or, I was wrong. I behaved a fool and I'm sorry. And it just feels so healthy. And the fact that we get to demonstrate this type of love and communication for our children gives me such hope that when they grow up, they won't look at the dysfunction and try to think that it's normal and everything's okay, everything's fine. So luckily, today, I have a circle around me that allows me to be so vulnerable, just kind of like in the show Inside Out, right? There's this range of emotions that we all have. And if we only allow ourselves to show the good emotions, the happy and the excited, and the everything's great, then we really are not allowing ourselves to be honest or resilient. And who am I if I'm not resilient? Who are any of us if we're not resilient? So these challenges that we go through, we get to give voice to them and we get to overcome them. And then we get to stand and say, man, I'm resilient. Like, I'm going to be okay. I wasn't okay. Might not be totally okay right now, but I'm okay. I'm still okay. But it's not in that fake way where it's like, it's literally like, I know that we have the strength in us that we will be okay. And the truth is, at this point in my life, I never want to go back to having that mask on my face where I feel like I have to say, I'm okay, you're okay, he's okay, it's okay. I really would much rather us to be able to sit down and have an honest conversation. And I want the people around me to feel like they have that type of freedom with me. And if my son decides to become a parent, I hope that he will look back on the things that I did wrong and find ways to do them better. Because isn't that what we all want for our children? To do better than we did? Thank you.